Men are not supposed to cry watching movies. Well, that just means they have not seen The Green Mile yet. Because this is not just a prison movie. This is a story about kindness and justice, those very rare miracles and the pain of having to stand there and watch the right thing get crushed right in front of you. But you are going to cry even more once you know what happened in the lives of the people who made this movie. Michael Clarke Duncan was gone way too soon at 54. Michael Jeter lived with HIV, made it through addiction, then died at just 50. Gary Sinise stepped away from Hollywood to care for his loved ones, then had to bury his own son after a brutal battle with illness. Take a look now at where they ended up after stepping away from this movie. And do not forget to have tissues ready for today's video. Number 1, Tom Hanks as Paul Edgecombe. Let's start with Tom Hanks. In The Green Mile, he plays Paul Edgecombe, the central character of the movie, and also the man who leads the audience through the whole story. Hanks was born in 1956. When the movie came out in 1999, he was 43. This year he is 70. By the time he took this role, Hanks was no longer somebody still trying to find his place. He was already an A-list Hollywood star after 2 Oscars and a whole run of major films in the 1990s. For Tom Hanks's career, The Green Mile was not some breakout moment. It was a milestone that locked in his status even more. The movie was a major commercial success, pulling in nearly $286.8 million worldwide, and it kept Hanks right where he already was as the kind of face people trusted to carry big, serious, emotional films. After that, he still kept his career moving at a very strong pace, which means Paul Edgecombe was not the one role that defined him, but it absolutely was one of the roles people have remembered the longest. The more interesting part sits in his private life and the things that came later. In 2013, Hanks publicly revealed that he had type 2 diabetes. 2 years later, his wife, Rita Wilson, revealed that she had invasive breast cancer and had to go through a double mastectomy and reconstruction. Then in March 2020, Hanks and Rita Wilson became one of the first famous couples to publicly test positive for COVID while they were in Australia, right at the point when the whole world was still confused and panicking. Then when the AI era came along, he had to warn fans about fake ads illegally using his face. When you really look at it, Tom Hanks has not had many scandals, but he has still gone through plenty of heavy hits from aging illness, family, and the pressure of a new era. Number 2, Michael Clarke Duncan as John Coffey. How could anybody talk about The Green Mile and leave out Michael Clarke Duncan, the man who made us cry the most? In the movie, he plays John Coffey, the giant prisoner with a gentle soul and also the deepest heartbreak in the whole story. Duncan was born in 1957 in Chicago. When the movie came out in 1999, he was 42. This role did not just bring his name into the spotlight, it also earned him an Oscar nomination for supporting actor, which is something not many actors get from a breakout that big. But the heaviest part of Duncan's story sat outside the screen.
Which he totally loved and which I
He grew up
hated,
on the South
but I'm glad
Side
I
in a
did, 'cause
family
the
with
movie
just
was
his
pretty
mother and sister after his father left. His mother worked cleaning houses to raise the kids. Duncan studied communications at Alcorn State, but had to leave school when his mother got sick so he could go make money. Before he became an actor, he dug ditches for the gas company, worked security at nightclub doors, and then became a bodyguard for people like Will Smith, Jamie Foxx, LL Cool J, and Notorious B.I.G. After Biggie was shot and killed in 1997, Duncan walked away from bodyguard work for good. That was not some small turn. That was the moment he decided that if he still wanted to live his own life, he had to go all the way and really try acting. In real life, Duncan was not known for scandal. People remembered him more as a decent man who came up through hard physical labor, found success late, and never really got to enjoy all the life he had fought for. The biggest tragedy came on July 13, 2012, when he suffered a heart attack. Duncan never fully recovered and died on September 3, 2012 at Cedars-Sinai at the age of 54. At the time, he was engaged to Omarosa Manigault, and the two of them were planning to marry later that year. At his memorial, Stephen King said nobody had ever made one of his characters feel so alive and so right. To me, that is what makes Michael Clarke Duncan's story even sadder than John Coffey's, a man who fought too hard to rise, shined too beautifully, and left way too soon. Number 3, David Morse as Brutus Brutal Howell. Next up is David Morse, and this is exactly the kind of face long-time movie-going men tend to remember very clearly. In The Green Mile, he plays Brutus Brutal Howell, the big, solid, quiet prison guard who always stands in the right place once things start getting out of control. Morse was born in 1953. When the movie came out in 1999, he was 46. This year he is 73. By the time he stepped into this movie, he was no newcomer. He already had a strong path behind him with St. Elsewhere, then The Rock, 12 Monkeys, and Contact. Put simply, David Morse came to The Green Mile as a real working actor who had already been tested by the business for a long time. But what makes his story heavier sits off screen. Morse married Susan Wheeler Duff in 1982 and had one daughter and two twin sons. That family went through a very real shock in 1994 when the Northridge earthquake took their home in California. Morse said it plainly: they lost the house, then moved to Philadelphia, lived near his wife's family, and kept a quieter life there for many years after that. That is not some glamorous Hollywood story. That is the story of a working man having to carry his whole family through a collapse and then build everything back up again from scratch. Morse's private life is almost completely free of loud scandal, but there have been heavy blows that are hard to forget. In a conversation with the AV Club, he said that on another film, his stunt double was killed in a scene he himself had originally been supposed to do. Right at that same time, his stepfather in Massachusetts was dying, and the shooting schedule only gave him a few days to rush home and see him. Later on, he also said he spent months carrying symptoms that felt like COVID at the very start of the pandemic when testing still was not reliable. So when I look back at David Morse, I do not think about scandal. I think about a private man who can take a hit and keep going, and who stayed with the work long enough for that quietness to become part of his whole presence. Number 4, Doug Hutchison as Percy Wetmore. Now we get to the face almost everybody who watched The Green Mile wanted to throw right off the screen: Doug Hutchison. In the movie, he plays Percy Wetmore, the cowardly, cruel guard who leaves a nasty taste all the way to the end. Hutchison was born in 1960. When The Green Mile came out in 1999, he was 39. This year he is 66. Before and after this movie, he was already the kind of character actor who fit twisted, unstable, suspicious roles really well. But honestly, when you look back at his whole life, Percy Wetmore still was not the most controversial part of it. The heaviest part came in 2011. That was when Hutchison, then 51, married Courtney Stodden, who was just 16 after the two had met through an acting class and stayed in contact for some time before meeting in person. The marriage was legal in Nevada with parental consent, but from the beginning it caused a huge public uproar. Hutchison later said that when he met Stodden, he was already in decline, had been through 2 failed marriages, and was still struggling with alcohol. Later on, he said that marriage cost him. His representatives made casting people turn away from him, pushed family and friends away, and in his own words, he blew his career's head off for love. The two split up and got back together several times before finally divorcing in 2020. But the story did not stop with one shocking marriage. After the divorce, Stodden spoke more and more openly about feeling groomed, manipulated, and verbally abused in that relationship. By 2025, the story had even been turned into a Lifetime movie, which shows this thing had not faded at all in the public mind. Hutchison denied those accusations and called them false and malicious. So when people look at Doug Hutchison today, what clings to him is no longer Percy Wetmore. It is a personal life so loud, it swallowed the career whole and turned an actor who once had a truly memorable villain role into somebody audiences remember more for what happened off screen. Number 5, Michael Jeter as Edouard Del Delacroix. This is one of the faces that made The Green Mile hurt even more Michael Jeter. In the movie, he plays Delacroix, a small, trembling death row inmate who is both heartbreaking and impossible to forget. Jeter was born in 1952. When the movie came out in 1999, he was 47. He was not the kind of actor people only discovered because of this film. Before that, Jeter was already a very skilled actor who had won a Tony for Grand Hotel and an Emmy for Evening Shade. But the closer you look at his life, the more you realize that the Green Mile was only one small slice of a life that was both brave and sadder than most people ever realized. Michael Jeter was openly gay at a time when Hollywood still was not exactly easy about that. He lived with his partner, Sean Blue, from 1995 until the day he died. In 1997, Jeter publicly revealed that he was HIV positive in an interview with Entertainment Tonight. He did not hide it, did not dodge it, and did not turn it into some dramatic performance either. Later, obituaries all pointed out that even though he was living with HIV, he stayed in fairly stable health for many years and also spent time raising money for AIDS Project Los Angeles. For somebody working in the business at that time, just telling the truth, that openly was already no small thing, but that still was not the whole weight of his life. Jeter had also been through addiction. When he accepted his Tony in 1990, he publicly said he was in recovery from substance abuse. That is the kind of confession not many people would make in front of a whole room, especially when their career was on the rise. Then on March 30th, 2003, Sean Blue found him dead at their home in the Hollywood Hills. Jeter was only 50. According to Blue, the cause was complications after a seizure. What makes that story even sadder is that a lot of people at the time still thought he was healthy, still working, still with a whole lot ahead of him. Number 6, Sam Rockwell as William Wild Bill Wharton. Now to Sam Rockwell. In The Green Mile, he plays Wild Bill Wharton, the insane death row inmate who turns the whole mood of the movie darker. But when you look off screen, the most memorable part of Rockwell's story is not that violence, it is a childhood split right down the middle. Rockwell was born in 1968. When the movie came out in 1999, he was 31. This year, going by the way this channel counts it, he is 58. He was an only child, both of his parents were actors, and they divorced when he was just 5. After that, Rockwell grew up with his father in San Francisco, then spent summers in New York with his mother. He has said himself that he always felt like an outsider, because one side of his life was very normal, while the other side was a much freer, more bohemian artist world. Rockwell's early years were not smooth either. He has admitted that when he was in school, all he wanted to do was smoke weed, chase girls, and go to parties. Then he transferred to an easier alternative school so he could get his diploma. After that, he moved to New York to chase acting, studied the craft, and worked all kinds of odd jobs to survive, waiting tables, delivering burritos on a bike, then working as an assistant for a private detective. Rockwell's adult private life went in almost the complete opposite direction. Since 2007, he has been with Leslie Bibb. They are not married, do not have children, by mutual choice, and Bibb has said very clearly that they feel their life together is already full as it is. That is actually one of the more interesting things about Rockwell. He grew up in a broken family. But once he became a man, he chose a long-term, stable relationship without any extra drama. Number 7, James Cromwell as Warden Hal Moores. Now for James Cromwell. In The Green Mile, he plays Warden Hal Moores, the head of the prison cold solid and carrying the kind of authority only a weathered man can have. Cromwell was born in 1940. When the movie came out in 1999, he was 59. This year, he is 86, but his real life has been much heavier than that role. He was born into a Hollywood family, the son of director John Cromwell and actress Kay Johnson. His father was blacklisted during the McCarthy era, his parents divorced early, and Cromwell has said that childhood shaped the political worldview he carried the rest of his life. Cromwell's private life has not been simple either. He married Anne Ulvestad in 1977, had 3 children, then divorced in 1986. That same year, he married actress Julie Cobb, and that marriage lasted nearly 20 years before ending in 2005. After another stretch of time, he married Anna Stewart in 2014. In other words, James Cromwell has not had some quiet, flat, private life. But what sets him apart from many stars of his era is that he never used his personal life to build glamour. He carried it into the way he lived and the side he chose to stand on. He has been vegetarian since 1974, then went fully vegan while filming Babe after seeing the same animals he had just worked with getting served for lunch. From that point on, Cromwell started looking more and more like an activist than an aging actor. He was arrested in 2013, arrested again in 2015, then sentenced to 1 week in jail in 2017 for refusing to pay a fine, arrested again in 2019, and by 2022 he had even glued his hand to a Starbucks counter to protest the surcharge on plant-based milk. Number 8, Bonnie Hunt as Jan Edgecombe. Bonnie Hunt is different. In The Green Mile, she plays Jan Edgecombe, the wife standing behind Paul Edgecombe, and keeping that character tied to a home, a decent life outside the prison walls. Hunt was born in 1961 in Chicago. When the movie came out in 1999, she was 38. This year, she is 65. But the most interesting thing about Bonnie Hunt was never a supporting role in a big movie. It is her real life, a life that started in hospitals, in a big family, and in the middle of some very real losses. Bonnie Hunt grew up in a family with 7 siblings, went to Catholic school, worked first as a nurse's aide, then became an oncology nurse at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. She once said she came into Hollywood carrying a huge fear of failure. A terminal cancer patient told her not to be afraid, just go to California and fail a whole lot. That stayed with her for life. While she was still working as a nurse, she used her lunch breaks to go to auditions and landed a role in Rain Man. That is a very Bonnie Hunt kind of beginning, not glamorous, not dramatic, just stubborn and deeply human. Her private life has not been perfectly smooth either. Hunt married John Murphy in 1988, separated in 2006, and divorced in 2008. She does not have children. In recent years, the heaviest part of her life was losing her mother in 2021 from natural causes in her sleep. During COVID, the two of them lived together, and Hunt said she was grateful for that time because she got to be roommates with her mother in the final years of her life. By 2022, she was still saying she was grieving. To me, Bonnie Hunt feels like the kind of woman who does not live off noise. She lives off family memory and that very Chicago kind of toughness. Number 9, Barry Pepper as Dean Stanton. You remember Dean Stanton, right? He is one of the younger guards, straight ahead and pretty calm, but the more memorable part of Barry Pepper's story is in his real life. He was born in 1970 in British Columbia. When the movie came out in 1999, he was 29. This year he is 56. Pepper is the youngest of 3 brothers. His father worked as a lumberjack, and his childhood looked nothing like Hollywood. When Pepper was just 5, his parents built a sailboat themselves and took the whole family drifting for 5 years across the South Pacific. He studied by mail and in local public schools along the way. No television, no city life, so the family entertained themselves with improv and acting games. After that trip, they returned to Canada, settled on Denman Island, and Pepper grew up in an environment that was very isolated and very rough around the edges. Barry Pepper's private life follows that same quiet pattern. He married Cindy Pepper and has a daughter. Instead of living some glossy life, he has kept family life very private. So private that in one Toronto Life piece, the detail people kept bringing up about his wife was that she held the camera while he made his own audition tape for True Grit, near their home on the island. Pepper did not come up through some smooth path either. He studied marketing and design before switching to acting, worked at White Spot, and in his early days he even got scammed by one of those acting classes that just tried to squeeze money out of beginners. The biggest collision in his public record was not some private scandal, but a career hit called Battlefield Earth. Pepper won the Razzie for Worst Supporting Actor for that movie, then later said that if he had known in advance he was getting it, he would have gone and accepted it himself. But that right there says a lot about Barry Pepper. No noise, no scandal, just quietly taking one very public fall and then moving on. Number 10, Jeffrey DeMunn as Harry Terwilliger. In The Green Mile, he plays Harry Terwilliger, a prison guard who is quiet, steady, and always standing exactly where he ought to be. DeMunn was born in 1947. When the movie came out in 1999, he was 52. This year he is 79. He did not rise through movie star looks, he rose through the craft. Born in Buffalo to parents who both worked in theater, educated at Union College, then trained in England at Bristol Old Vic DeMunn, took the very classic road of a real actor before stepping into film and television. DeMunn's private life does not come with big scandal, but it has not been one straight line either. He married Anne Sekyar in 1974, had 2 children, Heather and Kevin, and that marriage ended in 1995. Then in 2001, he remarried Carrie Leah. If you really look at him, DeMunn's story is not about scandal. It is about a very quiet kind of endurance. He is the kind of man who keeps his family out of the tabloids, keeps his private life out of the spotlight, and lives more like a stage actor who accidentally wandered into Hollywood than a true star. Even the fact that his son followed him into acting usually gets mentioned in such a light way, it almost feels like a side note in his life. The clearest collision in DeMunn's career came much later when he left The Walking Dead. He later said himself that Dale's death was his decision because he was furious over the way Frank Darabont got pushed off the series. He called it an enormous relief. That detail says a lot about Jeffrey DeMunn. Not loud, not flashy, but very loyal and very firm once he makes up his mind. Number 11, Patricia Clarkson as Melinda Moores. Now to Patricia Clarkson. In The Green Mile, she plays Melinda Moores, the woman at the center of one of the strangest and most painful scenes in the whole movie. Clarkson was born in 1959. When the movie came out in 1999, she was 40. This year she is 67. She is not the kind of actress who gets one supporting role and then disappears. Clarkson built her career through real craft, but her private life is what really shows how tough she is. Clarkson grew up in New Orleans, one of 5 sisters, with a mother, Jackie Clarkson, who was a pretty well-known local politician, and a father who worked in education and medicine. She studied speech pathology, then dropped it to go after acting, moved to New York, and graduated from Fordham. In her private life, Clarkson has almost gone straight against every rule Hollywood likes to pin on women. She is never married, never had children, and has said very clearly that she understood that was her choice when she was still young. Clarkson has also said it is not that she never had love, quite the opposite. She has had beautiful relationships and painful breakups. She just never wanted her life defined by a marriage certificate or by motherhood. The heaviest part of her public record sits in the collisions she has had in the business. In 2016, Clarkson said she had dealt with men behaving badly in the industry and directors who screamed at actors and humiliated them. Then in 2025, she said plainly that Harvey Weinstein became very ugly with her during the awards season in 2004 after she refused to campaign a lead performance as supporting actress just to make it easier to win. According to Clarkson, Weinstein told her she would never work again. She kept going anyway, kept working, and kept her dignity. Number 12, Graham Greene as Arlen Bitterbuck. And here is Graham Greene. In The Green Mile, he plays Arlen Bitterbuck, the first prisoner to walk the Green Mile, and those few minutes alone were enough to make audiences remember his face forever. Greene was born in 1952 in Oswego, Ontario, and was Oneida from Six Nations. When the movie came out in 1999, he was 47. He died on September 1st, 2025 at 73 after a long illness. Graham Greene did not rise through some glamorous road. Before becoming known, Greene worked manual jobs like welder, carpenter, and sound technician, then only later turned to acting. His private life was quiet too. Greene lived for many years with his wife, Hilary Blackmore, outside Toronto, had a daughter named Lily Lazar Greene, and later had a grandson, Tarlo. People writing about him often described a pretty peaceful life. Lots of cats, a love of writing, boat building, and golf more than any kind of Hollywood lifestyle. What makes Greene's story heavier is the crash that came in 1997. After a hospitalization, he spoke openly about struggling with alcoholism and depression, something not many actors from that era were willing to do in public. Some biographical records even state clearly that he was hospitalized after a failed suicide attempt that same year That is not the kind of thing that turns into loud scandal. That is a real wound. He died at 73, but he left behind a legacy far bigger than the number of minutes he appeared in the Green Mile. And before this list closes out, there is still one name left to mention in a very different way: Gary Sinise. Number 13, Gary Sinise as Bert Hammersmith. Closing out this list is Gary Sinise. In The Green Mile, he appears only as Bert Hammersmith, a much smaller role than most of the others on this list. But Sinise's real life carries enough weight to put him in the final spot. He was born in 1955. When the movie came out in 1999, he was 44. This year, he is 71. Sinise married Moira Harris in 1981, has 3 children, and for decades has been seen as the kind of man who keeps family life very private, very solid, very different from the usual Hollywood shine. But in recent years, his private life has been hit by one heavy crisis after another. In the summer of 2018, his wife was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. Just 2 months later, his son, Max Sinise, was diagnosed with chordoma, a very rare bone cancer. Gary Sinise has said clearly that from 2019 on, he had to almost completely stop acting so he could stay with his family. That was no longer about balancing work and home. That was the point where a father and a husband had to choose exactly where he needed to stand. After that, he also cared for his father after his father had a stroke and looked after his mother during the same period when the family was at its most shaken. The greatest tragedy came on January 5th, 2024, when Mac died at 33 after years of fighting illness. Sinise said his son had gone through surgery, radiation, and dozens of medications in a battle where even doctors almost never had ready answers. After that loss, he fully shifted his focus to family, living near loved ones in Tennessee and trying to preserve Mac's legacy through the music his son left behind. To me, Gary Sinise is the name that closes this list in the saddest way, but also the most beautiful one. Because in the end, what makes him truly big is not just the screen. It is the way he stepped away from the lights to stay beside his family when they needed him most. There is nothing shameful about crying, even if you are a man. And there is definitely nothing shameful about tearing up over a movie as good as decent and as deep in the bones painful as The Green Mile. Some movies end when they are over, but others stay with you for decades, and all it takes is hearing one line again, seeing one face again, or catching that light at the end of the hallway and all the old emotions come rushing back whole. If this movie ever touched you, tell me about it. Who did you watch it with the first time? Which scene made you cry? Or is there some moment in the movie that haunted you for years and still has not left you even now? To me, that is how classic movies keep living. Not just through box office awards or reputation, but through strangers sitting down and sharing a memory they somehow hold in common. That is also why the Weird Movie Secrets channel exists. My channel is still small, and honestly that turns out to be a good thing because it lets me read almost every comment, reply to heartfelt messages, and connect with you in a much closer way than a lot of bigger channels ever could. So, do not hesitate to leave your story. I really do want to read it, and I believe a lot of people here do too. See you in the next video. But for now, give me a few minutes to sit still with all the feelings still churning around after going back to this movie.